During a heated live debate, American politician Maxine Waters tried to belittle Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré with sharp remarks and open criticism. Yet only moments later, Traoré gave a firm and striking reply that left Waters utterly silent and the audience shocked. That unforgettable scene is now spreading rapidly across the globe. The studio lights burned bright, throwing long shadows on the stage. Millions of viewers were fixed on the live broadcast. The host had announced an uncensored discussion between U.S. politician Maxine Waters and Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré. No one expected how intense it would become. From the beginning, Waters' tone was severe, her words loaded with blame. "Mr. Traoré," she began, her voice cutting through the quiet. "Leaders like you act as if you care for your people, but in truth, you are nothing but a reckless dreamer pulling your nation backward." Gasps rang through the studio. Some in the crowd shifted restlessly. Others waited for Traoré's reply, but he stayed still. He sat upright, eyes calm, hands folded like a soldier trained to withstand fire without flinching. The host cleared his throat uneasily, sensing pressure rising like a storm. Around the globe, people leaned closer to their screens. What would follow? Would Traoré strike back? Would he defend himself in anger? Nobody foresaw that in only minutes, one sentence from him would freeze the entire hall in shock. Maxine Waters grew bolder. She leaned forward, pointing her finger, her words cutting the air like blades. "You stand there pretending to be some noble leader," she insisted. "But to me, you are only a child playing dress-up with authority you don't deserve." The audience gasped again, louder this time. The insult landed heavily, echoing across the hall. Even the camera crew shifted uneasily, unsure whether to keep filming. Waters smiled with confidence, certain she had delivered the final strike. For a moment, it looked as though she had trapped Traoré in front of millions. Yet instead of replying right away, Traoré lowered his gaze briefly, as if drawing from something deeper than rage. He breathed slowly, then raised his eyes once more, steady and sharp. The silence that followed was stifling. The audience leaned forward in their seats. Everyone expected fury. Everyone anticipated fire met with fire. But what he spoke was not anger. It was something far stronger. Traoré's tone was calm, almost soft, yet each word resounded like thunder. "Madam," he said firmly, "you may insult me as a man, but you cannot insult a people who have chosen dignity over fear." The hall froze. Every breath seemed to vanish. The smirk on Waters' face fell instantly, her mouth opening in shock yet unable to speak. The audience broke into applause, roaring, uncontrollable, with some even rising to their feet. Tears filled the eyes of African students seated in the front rows, pride swelling in their hearts. In that single instant, Traoré had not defended himself alone. He had spoken for his nation, for his people, and for every small country dismissed by powerful voices. Maxine Waters sat mute, her authority dissolved by a truth too sharp to fight. The cameras captured every detail, the stillness in her eyes, the unwavering resolve in his. And across the world, millions replayed that one sentence repeatedly, whispering to themselves, "This is what true leadership looks like." The clapping did not die quickly. It grew stronger, rolling like thunder throughout the hall. Some clapped in rhythm, others shouted his name. Tears streamed down the face of a young woman in the front row, a student immigrant from Burkina Faso, who had never witnessed her nation's leader stand so tall on foreign ground. Maxine Waters, normally quick and composed, sat frozen. The lights above seemed harsher now, exposing her silent shock. She had entered the debate expecting to dominate with words, but instead found herself powerless against a truth that required no shouting. The host shuffled nervously, uncertain how to continue the program. Let's move on," he stammered. Yet the crowd was not ready to move on. The chant of "Traoré, Traoré" began to rise from the audience. Backstage, producers argued frantically into their earpieces. This was no longer only a debate. It was history happening live, seen around the world. Screens flashed with replays. Social media erupted with captions. One sentence that shook the hall. The night was no longer under control. By dawn the following day, the clip had spread to every corner of the internet. TikTok filled with edits of Traoré's steady words laid over dramatic music. Twitter hashtags trended worldwide. Traoré silences Waters, dignity above insults. In Burkina Faso, entire neighborhoods crowded around small phone screens, watching the moment again and again. Elderly men who had endured decades of humiliation wiped tears from their eyes. Finally, one whispered, "At last, someone has spoken for us." In Washington, reporters scrambled for responses. Some defended Waters, saying she was only being firm, but most headlines told a different story. Traoré's calm words echo louder than insults. Waters, however, dodged interviews. Her office issued a short message. No comment at this time. Yet her silence only fueled the storm further. For Traoré, the attention was overwhelming. He received calls from African leaders, messages from strangers, even handwritten notes slipped under his hotel door. Yet he did not celebrate. He sat quietly in his room, holding the letter of a child. "Thank you for making me proud to say I am from Burkina Faso." It was a victory, but it felt heavier than triumph. That evening, Traoré met with his small team of aides. Their faces glowed with excitement. "Mr. President, the world admires you now." Strength. But Traoré did not smile. He rubbed his forehead, his eyes clouded with worry. "Admiration is not the same as understanding," he murmured. His aide frowned. "What do you mean?" Traoré leaned forward. "Today they cheer my words. Tomorrow they may twist them. Never forget we live in a world where respect for Africa is fragile." The room went silent. For all the praise outside, inside the hotel it felt like the stillness before another storm. Traoré walked to the window, staring at the glowing city skyline. "I did not come here to be a star on social media," he whispered. "I came here to remind them that dignity cannot be traded." His aides watched in silence, realizing that behind the calm reply on stage stood a man carrying a burden far heavier than applause could lift. The week was far from finished. The real test was only beginning. By Tuesday morning, Washington's political circles were in turmoil. Some congressmen defended Maxine Waters, saying she had only spoken her mind, but others whispered she had crossed a dangerous line. On the streets, the reactions were even stronger. Outside the Capitol, protesters held signs, "Respect Africa," and "Dignity is not an insult." Across the ocean in Ouagadougou, people celebrated in markets, waving Burkina Faso's flag, singing, "Our voice is heard." Meanwhile, Traoré sat quietly in his hotel room, declining interviews. He watched the coverage unfold, his face unreadable. To him, this was not about Waters. It was about history. "Mr. President," one aide said, "they are portraying you as a hero now." Traoré turned slowly. "No," he replied, his voice steady. "A hero seeks glory. I only spoke the truth, and truth does not need praise. It needs protection." Still, he knew the storm was only starting. When truth collides with pride, the world always shakes. That evening, the streets outside Traoré's hotel filled with supporters chanting his name. Some carried candles. Others held handmade banners with his words, "Dignity over fear." Inside, the president sat alone by the window, watching the flickering lights below. He thought of his people back home, farmers, children walking barefoot to school, mothers carrying water for miles. Did they know their president's words were echoing across the globe? His phone buzzed with messages from African leaders congratulating him, but he scrolled past them. What mattered most was not power, but the little boy he once was, the child who had promised himself that Africa would one day stand tall. As the chants grew louder, Traoré whispered to himself, "Let their voices rise higher than mine." That is leadership. For the first time since the clash, he closed his eyes and allowed a single tear to fall. By midweek, the pressure on Maxine Waters had become unbearable. Her office was flooded with calls, some supportive, but most outraged. Social media mocked her, clips replayed endlessly, each time showing her silence after Traoré's reply. Journalists camped outside her home, shouting questions. Do you regret your words? Will you apologize to President Traoré? But she gave no answers. She avoided cameras, avoided the public, her once bold voice now absent from the headlines. Across America, the silence was seen as defeat. Across Africa, it was celebrated as victory. But for Traoré, it was never about winning or losing. He told his aides softly, when someone falls silent after truth is spoken, it is not humiliation. It is reflection. And reflection is sometimes the beginning of respect. His words spread online, quoted widely, igniting deeper conversations. People weren't just speaking about a clash. They were speaking about dignity, about justice, about the strength of staying calm in the face of insult. And the week still had days left to unfold. On Wednesday morning, Traoré's phone rang with an international call. It was his younger sister, speaking from Ouagadougou. Her voice trembled with pride. "Brother," she said softly, "do you know the children in our neighborhood were crying with joy? They watched you on a small television. They said our president made the world listen to us." For a moment, Traoré could not speak. He pressed the phone tighter to his ear, eyes filling with tears. She continued, "But please be careful. Not everyone will be pleased with what you said." Traoré finally found his voice. "I did not speak to make them happy. I spoke so that the boy who carries water at dawn, the girl who studies by candlelight, will know their lives have value." When the call ended, he sat in silence, gazing at the morning sky. His shoulders carried more than a nation. They carried every hope, every scar, every dream of his people. Later that day, Traoré faced a press conference. The hall was crowded with reporters, microphones flashing like stars. One American journalist stood up, her tone sharp. "President Traoré, some say your response embarrassed the United States. Do you regret your words?" The room grew tense, cameras zoomed in. Traoré leaned forward slowly, his gaze calm. "Regret? No, because respect is not an insult. Respect is a bridge, and if one sentence shook the ground, then maybe the ground was never strong to begin with." The silence was followed by a surge of applause. Reporters, usually trained to hide emotion, found themselves nodding, even clapping. That clip spread across the globe within hours. Headlines declared, "Traoré stands his ground with grace." Back in Africa, young people replayed it proudly. One student tweeted, "For the first time, I don't feel small. I feel seen." Meanwhile, Maxine Waters sat alone in her office, blinds drawn, the world's criticism echoing in every report. She had built her career on boldness, but now she felt something she had not in years: doubt. Traoré's words replayed. Eventually, she answered one from an old friend. The voice on the line was gentle. "Maxine, maybe this isn't about politics anymore. Maybe it's about listening." Waters said nothing. She stared at her reflection in the darkened glass of the window. For the first time, she wondered if the man she had tried to humiliate had instead revealed something deeper: the world's reluctance to respect those it considers small. Her silence was not weakness. It was the slow, painful birth of realization. And as the week pressed on, both she and Traoré knew this clash was no longer just a debate. It was turning into a lesson for the world. On Thursday morning, a staff member knocked gently on Traoré's hotel door. In his hand was a small white envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note from an American schoolteacher. "Dear President Traoré, I watched the exchange on television with my students. Many of them are African American children who often feel invisible. After your words, I saw their eyes shine with pride. For once, they felt dignity in their heritage. You did not just speak for Burkina Faso. You spoke for them too. Thank you." Traoré read the letter slowly, his fingers trembling. He placed it carefully on the desk, then bowed his head in silence. "Even across oceans," he whispered, "truth finds those who need it most." His aides noticed his quiet tears but said nothing. They understood this was no longer about politics. It was about something greater, a shared cry for respect. The letter spread through social media after the teacher posted her copy. Soon thousands were writing their own messages of gratitude. And in that moment, Traoré realized his words had become more than a defense. They had become a mirror of hope. That evening, Traoré insisted on leaving the hotel without cameras or security detail. He walked the streets of New York quietly, blending with the crowd. He stopped at a small park where families played, and street musicians filled the air with soulful jazz. Nobody recognized him at first. He sat on a bench, watching life flow around him. A young boy selling snacks approached shyly. "Sir, do you want some peanuts?" he asked. Traoré smiled and bought a small pack. The boy looked at him closely, then gasped, "You're the man from the TV." Before Traoré could reply, the boy whispered, "My mom cried when she saw you. She said, you gave her hope." The words pierced him deeper than applause ever could. He knelt down, rested his hand gently on the boy's shoulder, and spoke softly. "Then tell your mother that hope belongs to her, not to me." The boy nodded with wide eyes, and in that quiet corner of the city, Traoré felt the burden of his mission heavier than ever. By Friday, the media narrative had shifted entirely. Commentators who once mocked Traoré now praised his composure. Editorials appeared in leading newspapers with titles such as "The Power of Dignity in a Loud World." In Burkina Faso, schools held special gatherings. Teachers showed clips of Traoré's response to Maxine Waters, encouraging students to believe that their voices also carried worth. Meanwhile, Maxine Waters stayed away from the spotlight. Yet behind her silence, sources whispered she was shaken, deeply reflecting on the moment. Her inner circle pressed her to reply, but every draft she wrote felt hollow compared to the weight of Traoré's truth. That day, Traoré spoke to a small African diaspora community. His words were steady. "This week was not about me. It was about every person who has been told they are less. Remember this, the world cannot define your worth. Only your dignity can." The crowd wept openly. Many rushed to shake his hand. Others simply bowed in respect. And as the sun set that evening, it became clear. The story had grown beyond a clash. It had become a movement. On Saturday morning, in the heart of New York City, something remarkable occurred. Hundreds gathered outside a community center where Traoré was scheduled to speak. Africans, African Americans, students, activists, and even curious passers-by. They carried handmade signs: "Dignity over fear," "Respect Africa," "Truth cannot be silenced." When he entered the hall, the crowd erupted, not in chaotic cheers, but in heartfelt applause. Slow, heavy, meaningful. Taking the stage, Traoré paused for a long moment. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of history. "I am not here as a man above you. I am here as a man among you. The struggle for respect is not mine alone. It belongs to all who have been overlooked, all who have been silenced. If my words reached you, then they belong to you now." People sobbed openly. Mothers clutched their children tighter. The hall felt less like a speech and more like a prayer, echoing deep into the night. That evening, news broke that Maxine Waters herself would appear at a televised forum the following day. Rumors swirled. Would she strike again? Would she defend herself? When she stepped onto the stage, the world held its breath. Cameras zoomed in, expecting fire. But instead, she looked weary, her voice softer than ever. "I underestimated him," she admitted. "I tried to shame him, but his words revealed something greater than my criticism. They revealed dignity." The audience froze in disbelief. Some clapped cautiously, others simply stared. Traoré, watching from his hotel, stayed silent. His aide turned to him. "Do you think she means it?" He replied calmly. "What matters is not her words today, but what she chooses to do tomorrow." Still, in that moment, the clash that began with insult and silence had transformed into something else. An uneasy yet powerful recognition. On Sunday, before leaving the United States, Traoré addressed one final crowd. Cameras streamed live across continents. His words were simple. You did not witness me. You witnessed the spirit of a people who refused to bow. And if my voice shook the room, it was because it carried millions behind it. The hall erupted in a standing ovation. People wept uncontrollably, some clutching their hearts, others whispering prayers of gratitude. Across Africa, televisions replayed the moment. Across the United States, families sat in silence, reflecting on every word. As Traoré stepped down from the stage, the world knew one thing. What began as an insult had ended as a legacy. My dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, if it made you cry, if it made you feel proud, then don't just scroll away. Subscribe to keep voices of dignity alive. Tap the like button if you believe respect is stronger than insults. And most importantly, share your feelings in the comments. Tell me the moment that broke you, the moment that lifted you, the moment you'll never forget. Because this story is not just for watching, it is for carrying in your heart, and you are the reason it lives.